Okay, so I'm going to move on to performance review. So this happens 2 times a year. You have your mid-year performance review and end-of-year performance review. It kind of depends on the company when they have it, but end of year I usually see happen between like August and September or so, because that kind of ties with the end of the fiscal year. So usually the time that you're allowed to ask for a salary increase is the end of year performance review. You can, suggest it at the mid-year, but they don't actually typically have that power till the end of year. So discuss this with your boss before this time. That gives them enough time to actually be asking HR, seeing what's possible, seeing what's in their budget, like gives them some time to mentally prepare. And since they're your boss and they'd like you to stay, most likely they would like to make this work. So if you kind of give them a heads up, that just allows it to move faster as opposed to, oh, I need to check HR, I need to check on these things, I don't know if we're allowed. So it can just move a little smoothly. I would prepare a one sheet of accomplishments. You already have to submit something that says like, here's all the awesome things I've done. Here's how I would rate myself. But a one pager is perfect to reference because I know you've all done amazing things throughout the year. Even potentially before that's bounced into that year, kind of a long-term project or so. So I would list all of the accomplishments, list any evidence, numbers wise, percentage, budget, increase in staff, hours saved of work because of something efficiency wise that you put into place, results. So put in really everything that you've done. One thing I think a lot of people don't realize, I see this with resumes all the time, is that they're like, well, I did part of this project and it did contribute, but I wasn't the entire team behind this. There was other people that really carried the project to the end. You were still part of that project. You still contributed to what happened at the end. So even if you weren't there for the full range of the project, I would still include that you contributed to that success because that does count for you as well. Like I said, a lot of people skip that. The next is utilize a cost of living influence. So they also realize typically they're in the same city as you. If they're not, then you can justify like I'm based in DC, you're based in Iowa. It's a little bit different cost of living. So make sure, especially if it's a remote company, that you're utilizing the, hey, like this is what it costs to be in this area. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm simply asking to like be able to feed myself and live here. So don't be afraid to lean on that because it kind of pulls at the heartstrings a little bit, and it's a fact. It's a fact that they can't argue with. Emphasize your commitment to growth at the company. They are more willing to increase the salary of people that they want to retain and want to be there and continue to grow. If you're giving hints that you plan to go get your PhD in like 6 months or that you're kind of looking around, they don't really feel like investing a salary increase for you if you're seeming like you're going to leave. So even if you're kind of questioning if you want to stay, honestly, they don't need to know that. Don't show your full cards. At this point, you want to say, I would love to stay here. I see a huge, growth opportunity here. I'd like to take increased responsibility, and having an increased salary would allow me to not have stressors of financial burdens and also be able to focus more on these new responsibilities. So adding that in just means, hey, you have a retained awesome employee. Let's keep them here. And then the other, so this is kind of some internal, if you happen to know. It depends on how open your coworkers are, what's really being shared. But do you know of other employees making more money that are at your level or maybe higher? That is going to be a really good point. It's not always well known. It kind of depends on if it's very separate departments, if it's more flat kind of hierarchy. So it is going to be situational. But if you're willing to ask other people, if they're willing to tell you, that can at least give you an idea of, oh, okay, like I'm clearly making 5,000 less than everyone else here. And I have about the same level of experience or maybe 1 year less. So that's going to be helpful to say, listen, like after discussing with other colleagues here, it appears that most people are making about 75 and I'm making 70. So based on my experience in these things, I would love to get to 75. So in those cases, you can, utilize that as additional facts. And then set the meeting for a Thursday. I know this sounds weird. You don't always have that luxury, but there is some science behind it that bosses are more likely to be a little more like not welcoming, but they're more likely to say, okay, I'll go for a salary negotiation on a Thursday. It's not the beginning of the week. They're not massively stressed. If they're about to go on vacation, I would not recommend a Thursday, but typically Thursdays are just more likely. So keep all of that in mind. That tends to be helpful.